How's everybody doing? Okay. All right. I want to say thank you to Michael, Melissa, and Arthur for coming up here and setting the tone. Thank you so much. And everybody else who created Fresno. So I promised myself at 25 I'll do something around my favorite poet, philosopher, Tupac Shakur. So this was really interesting for me at Coachella when I saw this happen. And so pretty much, okay, can we start over again? Is that okay? Is that okay with everybody else? All right, I apologize. I know there's a time limit. I apologize. We'll get there. But, so the title of the presentation is Tupac Shakur, Hologram at Coachella, Negrophilia, Necrophilia, or Does Heaven Have a Ghetto, right? It's sort of, so that's the title of the presentation. So one of the questions Tupac was really preoccupied with before he died was this question, does heaven have a ghetto, right? So when you think about black music in America, you can think of somebody like Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye was good with sort of the poeticness of love and everything else, but he dedicates an album to his social suffering, right? What is going on in the world at a particular time period. So he dedicates his life to say, I'm not making any love songs anymore, but I'm gonna ask the fundamental question, what is going on around the world? So one of my favorite cultural heroes was Malcolm X, right? Controversial, radical, humanist, however you want to tell him. But Malcolm was also preoccupied with suffering and evil, right? What does it mean to live in a time where evil is prevalent and young folk are dying everywhere around the world, right? So Malcolm wanted to keep a focus on, does heaven have a ghetto, right? So when you think about the American Revolution, right, if you think about the Boston Tea Party as being maybe the first idea of America's creation of identity, you also have a very sort of ironic thing going on, right? You have white men rebelling against their parental culture, sort of painted in red skin, right? So a culture you've degraded and killed is the same culture you use to sort of say, fuck everybody else, right? When you think about the 60s, right, the Ku Klux Klan was an interesting time period, right? If the Ku Klux Klan were out for truth and justice, it's sort of ironic to have a mask on, right? Because truth will always require vulnerability and for somebody to be unmasked, right? So we have a very contradiction going on in the American psyche so far. So Star Wars, I thought this would be funny. I have no idea what this is about, but I thought it'd be funny. So I threw it up there, so, yeah. Yeah, there you go, thank you. The next picture, though, is the Joker, and, you know, just kind of taking things seriously with what happened in Colorado. I thought it was interesting, you know, in one sense, we have to have sympathy for what's going on. At the same time, you know, there's this enjoyment of the movie going on with sort of radical nihilism going on in society, right? So in one sense, you have a kid who gets up one day to create this evil genius. At the same time, we have people lining up to go consume violence, right? So we have a problem there. This is one of my favorite poets, June Jordan. She asked a fundamental question that said, is it possible for a black poet to exist in America? You know, she wanted to know if it's possible to be free enough to talk about evil in every form, not only white racism, but justice against your own people, right? She wanted to ask a fundamental question. So when you think about the first black poet in America, you have to go back to Phyllis Whitley, right? She was a slave, she had no cultural bearing for the African heritage, but she uses the English idioms to sort of speak about the injustice of the American system, right? And obviously, if you know your history, Thomas Jefferson sort of derides her in his Notes to Virginia, says, there is nothing rational about our poetry, it's all sentimental, right? So we come to Kanye West, my favorite guy, who says, is hip-hop just a euphemism for a new religion, right? The soul of the slaves that youth are missing, right? So he says, we do our Jesus Walks dance because our precious kids are not born of immaculate conceptions, all right? We do our Jesus Walks dances because our precious kids are not born of immaculate conceptions, right? And Precious is a movie we've seen, the girl gets raped. So Jesus Walks dance, right, is a very interesting idea going on here. And then one of my other favorite heroes is Jay-Z, who will come up shortly. But Jay-Z sort of says, you know, I was born under a sycamore tree that makes me a sycamore MC, right? And he appears on Forbes with Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett is throwing up the diamond sign. That's the Jay-Z sign. So this was a very interesting moment in history for hip-hop and America, right? You have a kid from the ghetto with Warren Buffett, only the biggest entrepreneur, philosophical genius, if you will, meet together. So throw your rock up, if you will. But Billie Holiday was also an interesting singer herself. She has a song, Strange Fruits, that I'm pretty sure you've all heard of. And I thought it was interesting. So when I put this picture together, I juxtaposed it with the image of with Trayvon Martin. And what I was trying to say was, when you think about the American system, right, our holidays will always turn blue when we remember that strange fruits will always bear, when southern trees bear strange fruits with names like Trayvon Martin, right? The legacy and history of death is always part of the music tradition in America. Can we talk about what's going on, if you will, for the Marvin Gaye lens, right? Can we talk about the suffering? Does heaven have a ghetto? Where do these kids go, right? Are these kids pagans? Are they thugs? What are they? And if they die today, where do they go? And so I put this up there with Huckleberry Finn and Nigga Jim, right? It's an interesting moment when he's debating, should I turn this guy in? Should I run with him, right? They're making Psyche sort of debating with himself. What should we do? Do we owe him freedom at this point in our life? Or should we say, I'm going for my own? So at the same time, you know, it's a very interesting moment. And Dr. King, in the middle of his speech, sort of says, you know, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live up to the true meaning of his creed that says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men, bracket, women, are created equal. Right? So we're still trying to figure out justice. Is justice possible in the American system? And I thought about John Coltrane. John Coltrane was obsessed with trying to blow the saxophone in every way. The guy slept with this thing, he woke up with this thing, he was obsessed with it, right? And his best album is called A Love Supreme. And what he was trying to figure out, he was trying to say, can I ever tap into the mind of God with music, right? Can music be the very cultural expression of who I am, right? So him and Miles Davis were two of the geniuses who pushed jazz to a whole new era, right? A different kind of blues. But for me, I'm still preoccupied with death in America, the suffering of young folk in America, and what is going on. So I think of Tupac Shakur, who would say something like, excuse me, how many more caskets should we witness before we realize it's hard living this life without God? We must ask for forgiveness. Ask Mama why I have the urge to die, right? Witness the tears free-flowing from my eyes before she could ever reply. Tupac Shakur, again, does heaven have a ghetto? Where do these young kids go in America? Can we sing about them? So the last thing is I'm going to try to recite a poem by Tupac Shakur. It's a poem he dedicated to Van Gogh, and it goes something like, a creative heart obsessed with trying to satisfy this dormant and uncaring society. You gave us stars at night, and you gave us bountiful bouquets of sunflowers. But for you, there is only contempt. Though you pour yourself into that fame and present it so proudly, this world cannot accept your masterpieces from the heart. Cannot accept the masterpieces from the heart. Thank you.